Hello, hello. This is Mike Brown, and welcome to Reflections and Encouragement with Mike Brown, episode 94. This is an episode I've been looking forward to for a long time. So really, let me just take a step back first. As you join me today, thanks for joining. For those joining for the first time, this is an episode where this is a show in which I try to take some time to reflect on things that have transpired in my life within the past few days, weeks, months. But then I also take those things and then try to find some words of encouragement for you and me as we approach the days, weeks, months ahead. And I've had two guests so far on the show. The first guest was in 2021. It was my mother. She came and hung out with me on the show. It was chill, it was good. And then my dad joined me earlier this year as we reflected on some things when it came to Lil Netta's gift and the Lil Janetta Robinson Gifts of Love program. I'm extremely happy to share that today is daytime at the moment because it's March 13th, 2022. The one and only Jetaun Davis is in the building. So welcome to the show, Jetaun.
Thank you, Mike, the one and only. That's funny. Thank you for the really great introduction.
So Jetaun, I mean, well, we've talked about this, but there's a lot of reasons why I wanted to have you on. We'll talk about your background and your career and all this stuff, but I want to let people know. So one of the main reasons, well, you're good people, number one. So and I admire and respect what you do and who you are. But in February of 2020, and this is what people may not know, but in February of 2020, just to kind of paint the picture, it was right before the global health pandemic really kind of took hold. But in that month, my team at Notre Dame, we hosted and partnered with some people on a beautiful Super Bowl event that took place on a cruise ship down in Miami. It was great, fun time, and just a lot of great memories. It was in that same month that I decided to, in earnest, start to write my first ever book. I started to actually make the calls and talk to authors and talk to publishers about the process and all of that. But it happened in that month. And then the third thing, and this is the third thing that was really critical and to everything that transpired after that, was I was a guest on Jetaun's show, Journey to Jupiter. And I think you had invited me to be on that thing.
I was about to say, I've been trying to get you as a guest for quite some time, and you kept putting it off. And I was, maybe she don't want to be on my show. And then there is this point where you were like, hey, I'm ready to go. And I'm like, oh, I thought I wasn't going to bug you, about it. I thought maybe you were,
but
you
I'm
weren't
ready.
Really interested. Yeah.
So that month, now we got to get the time in. We'll reshare that episode. But that episode, that show, that conversation with you, Jetaun, is one that honestly changed my life, because it was during that show that I really went deeper into a state of reflection about my journey. And your show is called Journey to Jupiter. And so that, just talking about my journey, thinking about it, reflecting on it, as my wife, I give her credit. She just said it today. Remembering where I came from.
Yeah.
I had a chance to do that in having that conversation with you. And that conversation is what inspired essentially this show. And so this is episode 94, but it was after that conversation with Jetaun that I then recorded the very first episode of Reflections and Encouragement on March 1st, 2020. But nonetheless, welcome once again, Jetaun.
Yay, thank you for having me. I mean, of course, I'm honored to be here with you, and excited to see all that you've created and developed. So thank you for inviting me and sharing your platform with me.
Well, thank you. So Jetaun, let's maybe start just by, I think one of the interesting things we've talked about a bit is the fact that you are a Notre Dame alum, class 2005.
Got my Domer shirt on.
You got your Domer shirt on. Let's go, Brad. But we weren't actually at Notre Dame together. So
no,
class of 01, you're 05. So we didn't really cross over, if you will. Mm-hmm. And I can't remember how we actually met. I don't know if you remember, but
same people, like people, when you graduated, people that you knew were still there. So when you came back to campus, I think, but it just seemed like we were I forgot as alums, I forgot that we didn't overlap, but
Right.
we did overlap as employees.
As employees, exactly.
Yeah.
So I came back to Notre Dame in 2015. When did you start working back at ND?
At 2014, January
So 14.
2014
And so you were there from 14 until
to
what, 7?
18.
18. Okay. So let's maybe use that. Let's start with I guess people who don't know you. Let's kind of, I guess, in your own way, talk about your own journey. Where are you from? I know you went to ND, of course, but let's talk about just about you, your career path, and then we'll get specifically into your podcast, which is one of the things I definitely want to talk about in that journey.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, of course, talking about my journey, obviously I'm going to think about, with Notre Dame and talking with you, but originally from Atlanta, Georgia, came to Notre Dame from Atlanta, first generation college, single mom background. And I mean, I know we're not, this is not about Notre Dame, but Notre Dame has been such a big part of my journey. I mean, in 3 areas, right? So as an undergraduate college student, as an alum, I was on the Black Alumni Board, also the Notre Dame Diversity Council. When I was living in Los Angeles, I was on the Notre Dame Women Connect at the very, very beginning of that affinity group creation. And then, of course, returning as an alum. And, I really credit Notre Dame for giving me that exposure to just different people and widening my periphery of like my vision of what was possible.
Right.
Sociology major, didn't necessarily know what I wanted to do when I graduated, not at all. Worked some temp jobs before landing at a company that I ended up working for 8.5 years.
That was the company in California.
Yeah, well, first off, I came back to Atlanta and I worked for, it was Bell South at the time, yellowpages.com. So the online Yellow Pages that AT&T eventually acquired, and then moved to LA with them, but was with them for 8.5 years in my career, doing internet marketing, social engine marketing, or search engine marketing and search engine optimization, which is funny because to this day, when I talk to college students, most of them, when I do information sessions for where I am at now at Emory, so you see that, when I talk about different careers that exist that we don't even know of, right? Yeah, that was a career that basically I didn't go to college for per se, right? But just having that liberal arts education prepared me for that, right?
It's wild. Yep.
Yeah, and that gave me a career within that industry, from search engine marketing as an analyst to a trainer to a manager of a team to then working with vendor management, project management, product management, right? Yep. I had a great career at AT&T, yellowpages.com. And all the while doing that, I also was working on volunteering, serving on the Black Alumni Board of Notre Dame. And that was a combined education, professional experience, but also working on the board, understanding the education system, understanding with working with recruiting minority students or underserved students or historically represented, excluded students, whichever term you want to use. There's so many terms these days, but it just, we don't really think about what it takes to get into a competitive college, until it's late, right? Late into high school. And so it was actually serving on the Black Alumni Board, where I served as the recruiting director, where this became prominent, in my mindset. And I just started thinking like, man, we got to do something. We got to get to these students earlier. Middle school was the idea then, right? Like how do you do it? And this again is my voluntary service role, and I'm having a demanding job. But I had this idea of being a life coach, again, not having these ideas, not knowing how to make them, actually happen. And after being in my career for about 8.5 years and serving on the board, I realized, hey, I want to come back to the higher education side. And through working with the alumni board and knowing the current administration at that time at Notre Dame, I was able to then pivot and do search engine marketing for the enrollment division,
Or the
right?
enrollment division. Yeah.
Yeah, helping to expand the new media presence in terms of, identifying students to talk about their experience. So that way prospective students can kind of, envision what their journey at Notre Dame would be like. And so that was so much fun. It's working with students is the best, so
yeah,
I was really happy to make that career jump. Didn't know at first, right? Questioned it like, man, corporate, and like, did I make the right decision? But it has been an incredible, like the best decision to follow that urge, and work with students. And through having that experience working with students kind of reminded me, right, of the journey that I had from college, which was, man, everything's been laid out. You go to college, you're supposed to do this, you go to school, high school, you go to college, you do this. And now it's like, okay, now you're released to the world, and what do you do? And I had those conversations with students at Notre Dame, and they were just like, I just wish I knew, what careers existed. And I was like, that's a good idea. Right. And so that was kind of the seed for me to figure out, how do I meet that need? Right. And then as I came down to Atlanta and worked at Emory, I realized I want to have a podcast and I can interview people and talk about their, different careers. Initially, the idea was to highlight careers so that way students or young people can discover new careers. But honestly, gosh, it's going on 3 years now. It'll be 3 years. I've been doing the show April 5th. And learning about different careers has been great, but I think the better treat, the real treat is hearing about their journeys, because the big thing that I could hear from, we experienced it. I remember changing my major as a college student, and from business, I was in sleep business, and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm gonna be poor, like if I'm gonna change this major. But I knew I really, really love sociology and gender studies. That's what I ended up, graduating from Notre Dame with. But students oftentimes think that, there's such importance on what you choose to major in. And it can be helpful, absolutely, but life is not linear. There are many people that are doing things that are not necessarily directly in alignment, right, with their major. And the fact of the matter is that you're always learning skill sets, no matter what you're doing, that's going to help you, in what you're going to do in the future, right? Whether it be what you're studying academically or what you're involved in. You as a leprechaun at Notre Dame, I was involved with NDTV at Notre Dame, where I was an interview segment producer. Like who knew? Like I'm interviewing people on my podcast, right? So you just never know. I mean, I was a freelance writer for the Notre Dame Observer, the newspaper, and that was my writing sample to get my first job, right? So it all comes together now. As we're looking back in hindsight, it's always been about a journey, right? And just, of course, I remember you asked me, where did you get the name from? And you should talk about that more, because people come into the show at different points in time, and it's like, well, I'm into astrology, which you don't have to be. Most people don't have to be, but Jupiter, it symbolizes luck and knowledge and travel and, success. So that's like living your best life. And so it's the journey to living your best life, which of course, success, right, is different for every person. And so that's why, on the show, you're hearing people's, journeys to living their best life. And it's just been great. It's been great. It has not been easy, which is something that I do want to get to, because I know you said, look, let's leave some, some points of reflection and encouragement. It has not been easy, I have to say, but it has been rewarding and great. And I think what's really been rewarding is reflecting, right, on the journey, and like, wow, how this really has come full circle. And it's continuing to, of course the journey continues, but yeah.
We can start right there. You covered everything, literally.
Like, hopefully that makes sense, because I'm, trying to be concise, but yeah.
Well, it makes so much sense, and I don't know how to even start to respond to it, but I think as I tried to find some of the nuggets to pull from what you just said, right? If you think about it, it's a journey. Number one, I talk about journeys all the time, and how, we're all kind of on our own personal journeys, if you will, and there's intersections with all kinds of people, experiences, and all that. And so
Failures, like
failures,
thinking about your
yeah,
experience,
yeah.
how you
Oh, I've
didn't.
had many failures.
Well,
Many,
and just for those who don't know, on Mike's episode on my show, it's episode 44. I
you
looked it
found it.
up. Yeah. You shared, which I thought was so incredible. I had no idea that you had applied to go to London
Yep.
for the study abroad program and you did not get accepted. And
Yeah.
because you did not get accepted to that, you were able to try out to be a leprechaun.
Shout out to
And
Leprechaun.
hello, I mean,
Yeah.
if you think about going studying abroad in London, which is cool, but London is there, it's going to
Yep.
continue to be there, and being a leprechaun, like,
Yeah. It's that's one of those things. Number one, I would have been extra broke because I couldn't afford to go to London in the first place. And then I wouldn't have tried out for Leprechaun, which is an unbelievable experience. And I now call, like, every time I don't get accepted, or maybe don't have an opportunity that I want necessarily go my way, I call it a London moment. And I just remind myself that, you know what, I wasn't supposed to go to London. Like, or I applied for some jobs, that I didn't get, within the organization or whatever. But it's like every time I don't get it or don't get accepted, I'm like, you know what, it's because something else might be ahead of me that I don't even know on my journey. On my journey.
That's better than you can even have a plan for yourself.
Exactly. So, but I love, I'll tell you, you talk about students because you're still working with students, right?
Yep.
So you talk about something where you develop this, and I guess a couple of things. One is that a lot of the stuff that you kind of had your eyes open to, and a lot of the experiences you had didn't necessarily come from your, I'll call it your day job, if you will, but it came from a lot of the volunteer work that you were doing.
Yep.
And ultimately, what you discovered during that volunteer service, if you will, are things that then help you kind of basically navigate to what you ended up doing, or what you're doing, even doing now. And something that's important, because I believe in I think the more we do things that are outside of our day-to-day activities,
Yep.
the more we can just open our minds and eyes to other opportunities, not for different jobs, but just experiences in the world. And so I love that part of your journey. Two, the fact that you discovered, right, that you love working with students, right? Like, that's another thing that came through from there, because you talk in 2014 when you got the job in Notre Dame, but now you're still doing it, so we're talking 8 years later. So,
and some of them aren't students anymore, so I guess it's better just to say young people.
Okay.
Yeah.
But then your show is targeted toward I know students and younger people, but I think the show honestly is for anybody. If you ask me, I think it's something that, even as I look at you've had a number of different guests that have been on it, and I just look at the wide variety of careers that you pull from, which I love. There's a diversity in that. I think you have men and women, people at different aspects of their careers, and I love your show. So, period.
Thank you.
So thanks for doing that. So, one of the things I like to do, though, so beyond what we just talked about, as we look at maybe sharing, looking at where we are today, right? Looking at what's going on in our world, our country, and then I call it our local community. And I mean, when I say local, I mean our city, our block, and then within ourselves. In this moment, and where you are in your life, and then I gotta think about what's going on with me, I guess, right now too. But what might be so for anybody watching this, right? So I try to offer some words of encouragement to myself and to others. So my goal, I used to always say, my goal is to inspire at least one person through the show. And then I increased it to 2 people, because I was like, okay, I inspire myself. So, and then one other person. So that was 2. And today I'm upping that goal to 3. So you, me, and then somebody else. What might be something you would share as someone that might listen to this or watch this in the coming days to hopefully encourage them on their own journey ahead?
Yeah, I think it's about purpose, right? I mean, because I feel like purpose inspires us. Now, when I say that, sometimes the fact of the matter is that not everyone knows their purpose, right?
Right.
So then maybe, there's a group of people say, well, this doesn't apply to me, but you're curious about something, right? And so I use curiosity, and it's not my idea, but it's Elizabeth Gilbert, the author of Eat, Pray, Love. There was a talk she gave. She inspired me to think about purpose and curiosity very interchangeably. But I would just say it's very important to stay close to that, especially now with what's going on in our world, what's been going on. I mean, we had the pandemic, then we had the spotlight put on all these, injustices that have happened, have been happening. And then now it's just been one thing after the other these past, it's like we're in like a pressure cooker, right? There's just so much going on.
Yeah.
Or the spotlight, right? Things have always been going on, but the spotlight is on all the things that are going on. And it's hard. I think it can be difficult to stay inspired, right? To keep hope. And I think we have to stay connected to that which does light us up, that makes us, that gives us purpose, that makes us be curious. And it's something that's not easy to do, right? Like,
no.
It's romanticized, or it feels romantic, at least, like, oh, my purpose, if I'm working in my purpose, I never work in a day in my life, or if I follow my curiosity, it's just going to be like all rainbows, and that's not it at all. That is completely false, right? It's work. The fact of the matter is that purpose, that curiosity, that's like your life sustaining force. And that's what you got to hold on to. And so that's what I leave people with, is just find a way to stay connected to that which lights you up. And it is work, right? So just know that if you feel like it's work, or it requires sacrifice, it's not convenient, and you have to choose it. Because some people, they'll say like, oh, this is what I'm good at, this could be a purpose, right? But if you don't, I just had a conversation with someone last week, and she was saying that she just, designing, creative design found her as her purpose. It found her. And instead of her choosing her purpose, but the fact of the matter is that you have to choose something back, right? So even if something finds you, right, if you're not choosing it, if you're not initially discovering it, if you are self-aware and you accept it, you're choosing it back, right? So cling on to that inspiration, your curiosity, your purpose, and know that it is work, but that is your life sustaining force.
I can't tell you enough how much I wholeheartedly agree with what you shared. I do appreciate that. And I'm gonna tell you, Jetaun, so many people have asked me, right, with these books that are coming out, with this show that I have now, with kind of a different, I don't know, I'm a different person, quite honestly, than I was maybe 2.5 years ago. And many people have asked me why, what's changed, what happened. And it's hard to describe it to some people, because it wasn't like this one thing happened, right? Yeah. I mean, if you look at 2020, like you said, a global health pandemic, a lot of injustices, there were a lot of light shined on some things, Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd. These are all things that happened. But what also happened is my conversation with you, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so that year, I started running that year. I started doing a lot of things. But the one thing I also did, we haven't talked about this, was I started diving deeper into trying to understand what my purpose is on this earth. I started diving deeper into writing down what I believe my gifts are, and then really trying to figure out, well, why is that a gift of mine? What am I so good at that I'm just naturally talented at? And then I started digging into how am I putting those gifts to work. But that thread and came back around to really searching for my purpose in the world, which I kind of summed up as my purpose is to be an invigorating force for good. I'm a catalyst. I got that invigorating thing. That's a whole different thing, but that's kind of my purpose. But what happens is, like you said, everything I do, it doesn't matter what it is, right? It doesn't matter. Everything I do now, whether it's doing something Notre Dame, whether it's doing something I'm volunteering on, whether it's a book I'm working on, whether it's a show I'm working on, it doesn't matter. Family, I try to be, again, I try to be, because I am. I try to be, and I am it. I don't know. That's probably something. But
you try to be, maybe you sometimes fall short of what you hope to hit.
correct.
But you're always
I'm living
always
it out.
trying.
I'm
Yeah.
always trying, but that purpose is what really keeps me so level, so grounded, so inspired, so motivated, and just to keep pressing on, no matter what's happening.
And it was with
Uh,
your health challenges you've had, which I've been concerned, I've been, you've been on my mind about, and it's it's great to see that you've kept going.
yeah, I'll tell you, that's another episode. But but what I found, what I'm learning on my journey through that. So for those who are listening for the first time, I guess I'll sum it up. I ended up having my very first seizure on August 26, 2021. And I hadn't had any head trauma, or there was no, epilepsy in my family. And so it was a mystery as to why it happened. And initially, I thought it was my lifestyle, and so I thought it was maybe not getting enough sleep. I was too stressed, not eating well, not working out, and all that stuff. But then I started doing those things, and I continued to have seizures, and I was diagnosed with epilepsy. And so that was over. I mean, that was back in August, so we're talking 6, 7 months ago now. So it's not that long ago. But during that entire period, I ended up having 6 known seizures throughout that whole time. But at the same time, I published my first book, Little Netta's Gift. We ended up working with my dad and United Way and a lot of benefactors and supporters, of course, to resurrect a program in honor of my late cousin. And so we ended up giving away 831 gifts to children.
Wow.
There's just a lot of things that continue to happen
Mhm.
while on that journey. And what I'm actually learning right now is that, and I'm still discovering this, but I think I went through it to inspire other people. I mean, because it's
Mhm.
like somebody said, like, what if what you're going through isn't about you and how I respond
Mm.
to things? And I'm like, okay, because I had some down moments. I mean, again, this is a whole another episode, but I had some really down moments during that journey, because every time I had so I would have a seizure, they would prescribe medication and then think that would help and suppress them, if you will, or help them. And then I would have another one. It's like, man, here we go again. And then I had another one and another one. They would change the meds. Another one. I'm just like, when it's like, what's it going to take? And then people were saying it might take a year to find the right medication. It might take a year, and I was like, what? And so every
I
time I
got
had a
books to
seizure,
push out. I got stuff to
yeah,
do.
I got books to push out. I got I got money to raise for the, like, yeah, I got stuff I gotta do. I gotta live out my purpose.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just found it.
Yeah.
I gotta do some stuff. And so yeah, I was like, I got stuff to do. And so yeah, but I came back to, what, I'm a invigorating force for good through all the things. And it's like through the good times, through the bad times, try to really stay focused on my purpose and why I'm here, and take advantage of every day I have on this planet to do just that and enrich other people's lives and my own, um, uh, at the same time. Anyhow, that's a sidebar. But
It's inspiring me. So, you said I inspire you, but that's how this works, right? We all need inspiration. You need to be refilled with inspiration. So, thank you
yeah,
for
well,
living out your purpose. It's inspiring me.
well, thank you for getting me to go over that ledge. So with that, this is episode 94. Thank you again. Sorry it took 94 episodes for you to come on.
That is okay.
but
Everything
but
happens in its own time,
yeah, you were the inspiration and motivation for episode 1. So I'll never, I tell people that all the time, because March, I know the date of my first episode was March 1st, because I know it because I think it was the day before, if I'm not mistaken, that I had the call with you
Yep.
on your show. So I'll never forget it. It's a moment that was among many moments that changed my life. And I'm just, thank you for joining, and have a great week, everybody. Have a great few days ahead. We got St. Patrick's Day coming up, March 17th. And Solster has a big announcement happening that day as well. So I can't wait. Tune in and let's go.
Bye.
All right.